Do you know how tough the last few months have been for the UK? Energy prices are rising. The country's inflation rate are exceeded double digits. The longest-serving queen in British history has passed away, and the prime minister with the shortest tenure has quit. All of this was probably already known to you. British news gets plenty of coverage, some might say too plentiful in American media. However, there's a large narrative of decades of economic instability hidden below the obvious headlines that contain lessons for the future. Although its severity can change depending on the health of the economy, poverty was a persistent condition. Since material expectations differ among generations, social groupings, and countries, it is difficult to describe. If individuals who have access to adequate land or a salary that allows for the replacement of equipment and stock are considered to be above the poverty line, then at least 25% of people in Europe live below it. Urban poverty posed the biggest threat to governments. After 1750, the situation deteriorated significantly as a result of the rising population's impact on food prices and the labor market's favorable employer position. Between 1730 and 1789, living expenses increased by 62% in France, while earnings decreased in Germany as rye prices increased by up to 30% for the country's staple black bread. The poor in Italian cities relies on the government's control over the markets, prices, and food supplies. Genoa's riot in 1746 served as the warning of what might occur if they failed. The cause of riots varied. The press gang, Roman Catholics, the Irish, and gin taxes were among the problems in England in 1766. Almost always, hoarding rumors and the production of fake prices were the root of the problem, which was poverty as measured against a fake concept of fair pay. Britain is viewed by Americans as not only our political birthplace, but also our cultural partner, a wealthy country that gave us modern capitalism and the Industrial Revolution. However, in a strict sense, for a wealthy nation, Britain is quite poor. Britain's living conditions and pay are significantly lower than in Western Europe. Real earnings in the UK are already, by some measures, lower than they were 15 years ago and are probably going to be considerably lower in the coming years. This catastrophe was decades in the making. The British economy expanded after World War II more slowly than most of continental Europe. The British held a national discussions in the 1970s about why they were lagging and how the former empire had turned into a mostly isolated and dormant economy. Markets were deregulated, unions were crushed, and the financial sector rose to prominence in the 1980s under Margaret Thatcher, the British Prime Minister. Although Thatcher's introductions of neoliberalism had many intricate side effects, the British economy accelerated from the 1990s to the 2000s, driven by the financial boom in London. In the 20th century, Britain was the world's factory and became extremely wealthy. By the 21st century, it was the world's banker. The 2008 financial crisis had a devastating impact on the world economy, stifling Britain's economic growth. The UK government embraced austerity and focused more on debt than productivity or overall demand out of concern for escalating deficits. The outcomes were disastrous. 6 years in a row have seen a decline in real wages. Conservative leaders recognized a boogeyman they could hold responsible for this disaster in a slow motion when they were confronted with what author Fintan O'Toole called the dull dread of diminishing living standards. They presented a buffet of ominous misfits to uneasy voters, including Brussels bureaucrats, immigrants, asylum seekers, and everyone else. But they left out the real decision-makers who had destroyed Britain's competitiveness. A group of middle-class senior voters who were achingly nostalgic called for Brexit and succeeded in getting it. The UK government has chosen austerity over investment over the past 30 years. The UK economy has prioritized finance over the industry, and British voters have chosen a close, poorer economy over an open, richer one. Falling wages and surprisingly low productivity growth are the likely outcomes. Although the UK media is concerned that robots would replace humans in every job, the truth is quite different. Economic pundit Duncan Weldon said, between 2003 and 2018, the number of automated car washes, i.e. robots washing your car, declined by 50%, but the number of manual car washes, in other words, men with buckets, climbed by 50%. It's more like machines are being replaced by humans in the workplace. The UK economy is undoubtedly more complex than men washing cars. so this may seem like an odd illustration, but it serves as an example. The UK manufacturing sector has less technological automation than most any other comparable rich nation, according to the International Federations of Robotics. The average robot density in manufacturing was lower than that of Slovenia and Slovakia in 2020, with just under 100 installed robots per 10,000 manufacturing workers. Outside of London and the financial industry, practically every UK sector is less productive than its Western European peers, according to a study of the infamous productivity puzzle of the UK. Therefore, Britain, the first industrializing nation, was also the first to deindustrialize. The productivity revolutions that altered the world was started in Britain, yet today the country has some of the lowest productivity figures of any major economy. The once dominant globalized empire has opted to expressly limit access to trade and skills on a global scale. Since Brexit, there has been a decline in immigration, exports, and foreign investment, which will likely result in a long-term reductions of several percentage points in the size of the UK economy. The portrait I'm painting might not look familiar to Americans who have traveled to the UK. They likely only know London and not the entire nation, which explains this. The financial strength of London has concealed the economy's shortcomings in innovations and manufacturing. In other words, if you take out Greater London, whose success uncomfortably depends on a readiness to service oligarchs from the Middle East and the former Soviet Union, Britain would rank among the poorest nations in Western Europe. Right-wing oppositions to openness and left-wing oppositions to growth seems to be at odds in today's Britain. A growing movement known as the growth theorism, which contends that wealthy nations must give up their pursuit of growth to save the earth, has recently gained traction on the academic left in Britain. On the right, elderly people who worry more about cultural wars than competitions make up the majority of the electorate. The majority of voters who were of voting age did not support Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party when they secured a significant majority in the House of Commons in 2019. I believe this is the first time that this has occurred. They have a group of voters that are older, post-economic, and economically disconnected who can almost afford to oppose growth as a luxury because they aren't concerned about the results of the economy. For other nations struggling with the evil trifecta of deindustrialization, the growth, and alien denigration, the UK is now a cautionary tale. Its economy was not resilient when the industry was offshored in favor of finance. People began to look for culprits in a frantic attempt to stop the decline in living standards. Guilt-seeking conservatives have discovered enemy images abroad. Brexit has prevented the economy from experiencing further expansion and prepared the ground for a raging political circus. Problems in the US differ from those in Britain. However, politics must also contend with a structurally deteriorating industrial sector, a political left that frequently doubts the benefits of economic expansion, and a political right that is partly motivated by xenophobia. The results of industrializations, productivity, and globalizations can be criticized by opponents of progress. However, the UK serves as an example of what might occur when a wealthy nation appears to reject all three. It becomes bitter, beating, and illogical instead of becoming a post-economic Eden of positive sentiments. Alright guys, that's all for today. If you found this video useful, give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for more. Bye for now.